Florida Panthers hockey is back as the rookies take the ice for Rookie Showcase in Nashville. Today on the show, we bring play-by-play voice of the Charlotte Checkers TJ Chillot to discuss all that and more on today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, September 13th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're to your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at Bonoman12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at @LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at indeed.com/locked on. So, Florida Panther fans, grateful to be back here on another edition of the show as we are 25 days away from opening night. Mackie Samoskevich days away from opening night, mind you. And with all that mixed in with Rookie Showcase going on in Nashville this week, it is an exciting time. And here on the show today, as we teased right at the beginning of the show, TJ Chillot, play-by-play voice of the Checkers, is here to preview Rookie Showcase that will be going on in Nashville this weekend. And TJ, grateful to have you back here on the show. And this looks to be a yearly thing that we that we are going to do here, having you back here on the show. So great. Thank you once again for coming back on the show.
Hey, Armando, thanks for having me once again. And it's another year of Florida Panthers and Charlotte Checkers hockey. So as long as we've got that rolling, let's just keep doing these.
Yeah. And last year for you were I was grateful that you came on the show in the middle of your vacation in Jamaica with everything with your engagement. And I want to say publicly, congratulations for everything also that's going on with you in that department too of your life too. But I want to ask you, TJ, because right before the rookies went on the ice for their practice, right before heading to Nashville, the captain's skate, Barkov, Tkachuk, and Ekblad, they all hit the ice right before, and it was cool to see them cross paths, at least from what I heard, for right before they hit the ice. But just we talk about all summer about the organization winning the championship and it going up and down and everybody involved. But from when you watched the Panthers lift the Stanley Cup, like how did you feel when you watched it happen?
You know, it was so rewarding. Myself, Zach Harvey, our VP of Creative Services, our PA announcer, Miles Conrad, we were all hanging out at a bar. We had an entire corner to ourselves with the game on, and it felt like, you know, it's so cool to see people that you've come across throughout the year, whether it was Jonah Gadjevich or I know Spencer Knight was there. It was great to see him pick up the cup. And when you see folks like that and other people in the organization, you know, from just the media team, the PR team, and these people that you deal with on a week-to-week, a month-to-month basis, to see them just experience those pure moments of joy. It was really rewarding for us. I mean, we were there cheering, and a lot of people here in North Carolina were kind of looking at us like we had four heads, like, what are you guys doing? And we're like, no, this is the more important team right here. And that was an incredible night, one that I certainly won't forget from where I sat, but I can't imagine how it must have felt for the guys on the ice and people in the organization, and even folks like yourselves, you know, guys that cover this team and put in all the blood, sweat, and tears to finally see them cash in at the end, especially after the last couple of years falling short last year. And then, of course, the President's Trophy winners the year before that falling short. So it was great to see all of that finally come to fruition. And immediately after, you know, when we're done watching the game, we're done watching the post-game press conference, I knew exactly what everybody was thinking was, that was a lot of fun, but next year's right around the corner.
Yeah, and just like I've said this before, and I'll say it again. It's so crazy that with the parade happening on June 30th, the very next day you have to say goodbye to everyone for the pending UFAs at the time there. And now the guys are getting back into that mode of trying to just do it again. So Geordie Kinnear was part of the taxi squad, working with the guys, especially the young guys, to actually get to really help them get into that mindset of this is the place that you want to be too. And actually, I have a clip for that I want to play here on the show on the pressure of what he was feeling, and asked if there's a different juice coming in for the players. So here is that clip from Geordie Kinnear from back in D camp back in July.
I'm going to tell you there's more juice for me. So I think you look at what the group has done, the organization, Paul, the team. I think it's inspiring, motivating. So I can tell you I relay that to the group. And I think, as I said, it only makes the process that much more important, and there's a lot of credibility behind how you play, how you operate, for these guys to look up to. And as I said, like Sam Bennett, Verhage, all these guys, like you can show those clips, and I know the work that they all put in to get to that level. And that's our job as a staff, as a coaching staff, to relay how much work they actually put in. It's, the end product's the end product, but there's a lot behind closed door, and it takes a long time to get there. So,
yeah. So just going back to everything with pressure, and NHL being a league with a hard cap too. You can't move money around like you can in the NFL. So I mean, even before last season, Bill Zito spoke about focusing on Charlotte. Obviously, Leo Luongo part of the mix with the goalies there too for the Checkers. But also, I mean, taking advantage of the cheap contracts that you have. I mean, even at the time, Gustav Forsling, who was picked off of waivers, former Checker Gustav Forsling, and for the Panthers there, just this for them, very, very important that this is the development for the guys up down below. I mean, we're going to mention guys in a bit, like a Mikulas Hovorkas, of the guys who have to be part of that. But for you going into this season, and now that there's a championship pedigree, how much closer are you looking at the guys on who is going to be elevating up for eventually for the Panthers?
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that we constantly are thinking about, because it affects our team on the day-to-day so much. I mean, whenever there's an injury at the NHL level, we're kind of thinking and holding our breath. Does that mean we're going to lose someone? Does that mean, who's going up? Do they have enough guys on the bench that can cover him up? If he's out for any length of time, we're definitely losing a guy like Samoskevich or Sourdif or Lockwood or someone like that. So I think we think about that a lot every single day, just because our team changes so much and morphs so much throughout the year based on what happens at the NHL level. So the good news in the offseason is, I think winning the Stanley Cup, Bill Zito, the rest of the squad there, they obviously are not content with just the one Stanley Cup. They want another one. And you could see that in the moves that they made. And they bolstered that team pretty solidly, to the point where I think now the Charlotte Checkers is going to have some really tough decisions as to who's going to go to the ECHL and who's going to stick around here in the American Hockey League. And it might be some names that you might not expect, just because the depth has gotten so good, and that starts at that NHL level. The depth has gotten a little bit better at the NHL, and all of that, it always cycles its way down.
It's funny because I have this on the show notes for later in the show, but you did mention the ECHL for that. I want to get your thoughts real quick on the affiliation change for the Panthers. Now, for the last 2 seasons, they were affiliate of the Florida Everblades. I was saying once the affiliation change happened, I was saying, dang, Florida hockey, it being in proximity, but as far as the AHL team, for them being close to the ECHL team, I don't know exactly how many miles Savannah is from Charlotte. It's like 2 hours, I believe it is. But I was thinking logistically how much better it is for the organization about moving guys up and down. I mean, a few guys have been around for up and down those two, like Zach Ewens, Evan Naus recently, Cormier, other guys like that. So what are your thoughts on the affiliation change for the Panthers?
Well, first of all, earlier this summer, I was chatting with VP of Hockey Operations for the Florida Panthers, Paul Krapelka, and he had mentioned, it was actually during a press conference, that the entire goal of this organization is to have that same identity both on and off the ice, starting with the Panthers all the way down. And one thing that's huge and is going to be key from the AHL to the ECHL level is going to be Jared Stahl, who is now the head coach of the Savannah Ghost Pirates, formerly, for the last 2 years, the assistant coach of the Charlotte Checkers. So that pedigree, that branding is just all the way through. And I think that's going to be huge because it's just going to prepare these guys to be ready for the AHL the moment they're called up. And it's only going to better prepare guys for the NHL the moment that they're called up as well. So I think that that is huge. Having Jared behind the bench, a guy that's been in the system for a couple of years, understands what the Florida Panthers way of life is and how they play on the ice. That's going to be huge. And obviously being close is a big deal. I know a lot of people, they like their affiliation to be in a tight little circle. They like it to be close. And a lot of times that helps. And when you do have a lot of movement, it's a big deal. Now, I'm kind of a negative Nancy in this way, in the sense that I like to say, well, during the regular season, sometimes location doesn't matter, because if the Checkers are off playing the Milwaukee Admirals and they need to make a call up from the ECHL, and, Savannah's up playing Maine, you still have a really far flight. Or even if the Checkers are in Milwaukee and Savannah is home, you still have a long connection. So only 25% of the time are the Checkers at home and Savannah at home. But of course, with the way schedules are, we play mostly weekend games. There's a smattering of weekday games. They play mostly weekend games. So, guys moving around during the week and getting extra bodies for practice. If one guy's just kind of dinged up a little bit and is still likely to play in the games on the weekend, that's huge, because it is just a couple of hours and they can just drive right on up.
Yeah, and with the Charlotte Checkers and their ownership change, that ownership group that is also part of the Savannah Ghost Pirates too. So there's also a little bit of that flavor there for the relationship there for both franchises. But we're going to continue on this conversation of previewing the rookie showcase, but we're going to talk mostly about some of the returning guys, and then in the third segment we're going to talk about some of the newcomers for the Florida Panthers and the Charlotte Checkers coming in. We're going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car into the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And once again, I'd like to thank you guys for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure you listen to Locked On NHL, which provides you a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day, with national experts and local insights on every team in the league. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Back here with TJ Chillot, the voice of the Charlotte Checkers, here on the show to discuss prospects. We are discussing prospects here on the show. And this segment is going to be all about the season that was for the Checkers here. We spoke about the success of the NHL franchise, the ECHL and AHL new affiliations there. But the Checkers unfortunately bounced out against the Hartford Wolfpack, which they were very successful during the regular season. Every time I was looking at either whether it was watching it live against the Wolfpack, it was either Mackie Samoskevich performing well or Spencer Knight performing well against their home state team. And then unfortunately they get bounced in a winner take all against Hartford, which I was in Hartford earlier this summer. And I remember you sent a thumbs down emoji when I was at the XL Center there. But I want you to kind of summarize the season for the Checkers yourself, and just your thoughts on the growth of the team.
It was obviously a tough loss to lose in the first round of the playoffs this year. I think that was a hard pill for everybody to swallow. The team had gotten so hot during the second half of the year. And now through my 3 years with the Charlotte Checkers, that seems to be a very consistent MO of this team. Is come January, February, boy, they really start to hit their stride. It paid off pretty nicely in my first year when the team went a few rounds into the playoffs, ultimately didn't get into the Eastern Conference final. But last year, I think this team was just really trucking and they were moving good. And it was the perfect matchup against Hartford on paper because this was a team that they played during the regular season and had beaten them 7 out of 8 times. It was that most recent time, which was their very last game of the regular season that, you know, I don't want to call it a throwaway game. Both teams were already in the playoffs, so they weren't showing too much. I think it's kind of the equivalent of a preseason game, right? Like you don't want to give away all of your secrets. But when these two teams have played each other 8 times in a year, anything can happen, and that's also one of the the downsides of having a 3-game series to open things up. The AHL with the playoff structure that they have, 3 games in the first round, your middle rounds are 5 games, then you go to your Calder Cup finals, which now all of a sudden is a 7 game. So when you get those 3-game series, we've heard head coach Geordie Kinnear say this many, many times, anything can happen. And we win game 1, and I think everybody was just ready to go. We win game 1 at home. We had all 3 games at home just because of the way that everything was structured. But we win game 1, and all of a sudden we kind of come out flat a little bit in game 2. We end up battling our way back to tie the game and then lose game 2. And then game 3, it was just all Hartford all the time, and they ended up taking the series. And it felt like a gut punch. I will tell you that I don't think I got over that loss probably until the Panthers season was over in terms of time, because I did not expect the season at any point. When I was calling those games, I was like, no, I think these guys got them. I think we're going to move on. And then all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, like it was just, I got hit by a truck. Like I couldn't believe that's what happened, but hats off to Hartford. Like you mentioned, it turned out to be pretty darn good for them. I think they took that momentum and just rolled forward through the playoffs. Obviously they ran into an absolute powerhouse in Hershey, who kicked them out of the playoffs, and Hershey goes on to win their 2nd consecutive Calder Cup. So not much you can do there. So at least when you're from the Charlotte Checker side, at least you didn't just shoot yourself in the foot and then watch the other team also lose in the very next round because they got manhandled or something like that. So hats off to Hartford, and I'm curious to see what that does for the rivalry going into this year.
Yeah, and Hershey with their history with winning so many Calder Cups and doing it against the Coachella Valley Thunderbirds in their 2nd consecutive matchup against one another there. But some of the guys who were a part of the mix, I mean, we spoke about Spencer Knight all throughout the summer. 45 games played, 5 shutouts during the season. Mackie, 22 goals, 32 assists in 62 games. But some of the other guys that were a big part of the mix for the Panthers in the beginning of the season, Uvis Balinskis was a big part of that. He gets extended throughout the year there. And then one guy who might be a late bloomer for the Panthers is going to be part of the rookie showcase, Wilmer Skoog. A pretty good season himself. 22 goals, 9 assists. This guy can shoot the puck, man. So what have you seen for some of those guys as guys who could possibly make that next jump?
Yeah, I think there's probably a group of 4 guys that are kind of going to be that cream of the crop that'll be the first call-ups if they don't make the team right out of training camp this season. And it's gonna be Wilmer Skoog, Mackie Samoskevich, Justin Sourdif, and then you got to throw in a guy like Will Lockwood there. He's a little bit older than the other 3 guys, but we saw last year how much he kind of went up and down as needed. So those are kind of the 4 guys that I'm keeping my eye on, and I kind of alluded to it earlier in the podcast. Just, whenever there's an injury, we kind of go, who are we losing? I would kind of sit there if it was the forward group anyway. If there was an injury, I'd be like, I would put my money on any one of those 4, depending on how training camp goes and how the start of their season goes and where they are. But Wilmer Skoog is a great story simply because he signs an AHL deal with the Charlotte Checkers last year. To begin the year, he starts in Charlotte, plays a handful of games, and gets kicked down to the ECHL. We have an injury here, or it might have even been an injury at the NHL level, but we lost a player. Skoog comes right back, and I don't know what happened to him in Florida with the Everblades, but he came out of the gates like, I'm never going back there ever again. And he was an entirely different player, and it earned himself a two-way deal with the Florida organization midway through the year. So he completely bloomed onto the scene. I remember calling his games many years ago in juniors when he was with the Minot Minotauros, and he was always the standout player for them as well. So to see him have a little bit of that dip, I was like, okay, this is a guy adjusting to the pro game. He adjusted fast. I'm telling you, after that send down to the ECHL and then his subsequent recall back up, entirely different player. I'm really hoping that he gets the chance to show what he can do at the NHL level and maybe get a call up and make his NHL debut sometime this year. But those are kind of the guys. Justin Sourdif had a fantastic year last year. He was so improved physically from his rookie season. He was just stronger. He's not the biggest guy on the ice, so he knew that he had to hit the weight room last offseason. He did that. He was so stout. Guys would try to throw him around looking at him and going, he's one of the smaller guys. This should be no problem. I can just, use the body and be physical on him. He wasn't taking that. He was standing up to hits, and then he was using his speed and his agility to get away from the hits, and all of a sudden, you're catching guys on their heels, and they're making these risky plays going for the body against a guy like Sourdif. And Samoskevich, for him, matter of time. He's got all the tools. He's got the vision. He's got a great just nose for the puck. He's an awesome passer. I can't tell you how many plays were set up because of Mackie Samoskevich last year. He's an unselfish player too. He'll look for that pass first, and then if he does got to take a shot, he will, and it'll certainly do some damage. So I think out of those four guys, there's going to be some combination in Florida, some combination in Charlotte. Which two or which three are going to be up there, or which four, they could be all four, are going to be up there, and which are going to be in Charlotte, we'll find out through training camp, I think. But, I think Wilmer Skoog will start in the AHL here, and he'll continue his season. And then as for, maybe Lockwood, since he's been around a little bit longer, he might start, in the AHL, and they'll let Sourdif, Samoskevich get their cracks with the Panthers. But depending on how things shake out, maybe we see that change. But those are the top four guys, at least forward base, that I think we're going to lose.
Yeah, and then I think about for Will Lockwood too. Things changed a little bit when he was on the NHL level, and he got that suspension for his hit on Marc-Andre Fleury too. Was just reminding myself of that too with everything with Lockwood, and just still him develop there for the Checkers there. And then you're gonna have probably your second wave, not necessarily second wave of guys, but guys who are a year away who are returning to the Charlotte Checkers. Guy who's won a national championship in college, and Mike Benning for the Denver Pioneers there. Ryan McAllister is gonna come in for another year too for them. Maybe Zachary Ewens, after winning a Kelly Cup for the Everblades, maybe he will be a consistent part of the Checkers too. And Kai Schwent, he played only one game with the Checkers, so maybe he'll have an opportunity to be a mainstay for Charlotte too, which Kai Schwent will also be part of rookie showcase here in Nashville too. But we are going to continue the conversation here as we are going to still preview rookie showcase and also talk about some of the newcomers here for the Panthers here as we continue this conversation with myself and TJ Chillot next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. And if you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 300 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. You can leverage over 122 million qualifications and preferences every day. Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. So go to Indeed.com/lockedon to use this offer and for a $75 job credit, and told them that you heard it on this podcast. Once again, it's Indeed.com/lockedon. And once again, I'd like to thank you guys all for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Here once again with TJ Chillot, the voice of the Charlotte Checkers. So it's funny because when the Panthers signed Matt Guzda to his deal, we heard Knoxville, Tennessee, a very rare place for NHL players to come from. I can't even imagine how great it must be for him. I know we can't speak for him, but I can't wait to see him be asked the question on how great it is to be back in his home state. We're in the southern part of the United States, TJ. So the growth of the game is so important in a weekend like this.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be huge. And obviously, this rookie showcase is the third now of the last couple of years. It was hosted by Florida last season. It was in Carolina the year before that. And I think, those teams, Florida, Carolina, sometimes even the Capitals, the southern-based teams, you kind of have a little bit of a bigger responsibility to grow the game than you would if you're a Toronto or a Montreal or a New York or Chicago, these southern markets. And I think, Tampa, same thing there. When you're winning cups and the cups staying in the state of Florida and these non-traditional hockey markets are competitive, they're fun to watch, they're winning, I think that is huge. And that's why, these rookie showcases, it's a great way to continue to build hockey in the area.
Yeah, and the schedule goes as follows for the rookie showcase. On Friday, September 13th, they will be facing the Predators at 2 p.m. Saturday against the Carolina Hurricanes at 2 p.m. And then they'll have a day off on Sunday, and then they'll be back on the ice on Monday, where they will face the Tampa Bay Lightning Prospects at 10 a.m. So there'll be some newcomers here for the Charlotte Checkers here for this season, and some of the guys will get their chances in training camp too. And also the fact that there are going to be some guys who have played pro hockey who will also come into the mix. One of them is Oliver Okuliar, who I got to see in development camp too, and also Mikulas Hovorka, someone that we got to talk to during the playoffs and during the first round. That's when he had his media availability. It was big man, 6'6". We're talking about big men coming into the mix, and also the biggest of them, the goaltender, Cooper Black, 6'10". We still spoke about Anthony Stolarz last year with the Panthers, 6'6", but Hovorka's 6'6", Cooper Black, 6'10". I remember even 2 years ago in D camp, he was like, I don't want to grow anymore. Please don't let this happen. But you can't teach size for these guys too. But how excited are you for what these guys who have played pro hockey overseas, of what they can bring to the table?
Yeah, I'm really, especially the defensemen, because I think when you look at the Charlotte Checkers and what they could be going into next year, when you look at the three units, forward, defensemen, goalies, defense is the biggest question mark for me. You lose Lucas Carlson, you lose Santu Kinnunen, Kali Jalin was traded at the deadline. So defense is a big question mark. So guys like Hovorka stepping in, as a young player, Benning all of a sudden in his second year, who we talked about a little bit earlier, he's going to kind of be a veteran on the blue line, having played all of last season with Charlotte. It's really going to be Matt Kierstead, Mitch Van de Sample, and Mike Benning. Those are kind of your three proven defensemen, and everybody else is going to have to fill in, and they're going to fill in with some of these younger guys. So I'm excited to see how that works out. I do always have that question mark, especially the guys that played overseas on the bigger ice. How does that translate? Some guys, it translates just fine. Other guys struggle with it. It takes some time before they find their feet. Some guys never find their feet, and it just doesn't work out, and they end up going back home. So I am curious to see how they adjust. And this is the time that they're going to have to learn to adjust. So I'm curious to see what the defenseman is going to look like. And even in the forward group, the Checkers didn't lose too many key guys, this past season in terms of forwards. Patrick Kodorenko went overseas. They also lost Skylar Brindamore, who went to Chicago in the AHL, and a couple other names. So there's not a lot of movement I don't really see in the forward group. Again, it all depends at the NHL level and which of the Samoskeviches and Sourdifs end up where. So the forwards are going to have, their work cut out for them, but this is a real big opportunity for the defenseman. As for Cooper Black, it's a crowded goalie room right now too. You got Matt Guzda, who he's certainly earned his spot, at least in the AHL. It'll be interesting to see how he starts, having missed all of last year with an injury. Mm-hmm. You brought in Ken Appleby, the veteran. He's into the fold now all of a sudden. And then you also have to figure out what's going on with Chris Drieger and Spencer Knight. I got to imagine one of them is probably going to be the backup to Bob up at the NHL level. So, okay, if Drieger and or Knight is the backup, the other is in Charlotte. So then who's the backup in Charlotte? Does that automatically go to Guzda, or does a guy like Appleby get the chance while Guzda, gets readjusted after the injury? Or does it go to a rookie like Black? Does he stand out at the showcase? Does he stand out in training camp? So it'll be very, very interesting to see how that goes. But one thing I do know, especially with head coach Geordie Kinnear, he likes to run a 3-goalie system. So I wouldn't be surprised to see us carry 3 goalies for almost the entire year. We did that last year, balancing back and forth between Knight. We brought in Magnus Hellberg. We had Ludovic Weber for a little while there too. And then, of course, Guzda was hurt. So, you kind of balance those 3 guys. So we'll see how that goes as far as the goalies are concerned. But I remember the first time I saw Cooper Black, he was one of the Black Aces last year for us. And he was practicing with the team as we're getting ready for the playoffs. And I'm walking ice level behind the net. And I'm just this guy's massive. Like, it's just a skyscraper just standing in the blue paint. So, but like you said, he can't teach size. Now, obviously, with size, there's some deficiencies there. So that's what he's going to have to learn at the pro level.
Yeah, for sure. And for the Checkers here, for the 3 goalie system. I mean, you're not if it is Drieger that gets put through waivers, it's going to be a little different navigating that versus if it's Knight that is, he's probably gonna have a majority of the starts because he'll be that more of that spring chicken versus the other way around for Chris Drieger, who's a veteran for him and his career. So we do have some new guys coming into the mix for the Panthers here, and just guys who mentioned Cooper Black earlier, Hovorka, but also guys like Josh Davies, who played in Portland along with his teammate Merrick Alster. We spoke about the defense. In addition to Kierstead, I mean, Merrick Alster had a little bit of time in Charlotte later in the season too. Liam Arnsby is going to be part of the mix too. Ben Steeves too played 8 games last year for Charlotte too. Went to a D camp. Didn't go for 1 year, came back too. But also one thing that I was very impressed from when what Josh Davies spoke about is just trying to take care of your body and how it affects everything. Going to have fun and knowing that you are in facing the top prospects in the world. But also, Geordie Kinnear is talking. One thing of his messaging in a time like this is the hardest part is the composure part of this. So if not trying to do too much during this, I know you're trying to make the team. I know there's still a training camp too there. So I think that's a good. I think some of the guys really have a good head on their shoulders going into a weekend like this.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, that's the key, right? It's just you don't need to go and play lights out. Like if you think, oh, hey, I put up 8 goals during those 3-4 games, like I got to get a look. That's not what the team's really looking for. They want to know how you are playing within the system that is designed by everybody from Florida all the way down to Savannah. So it's really just more about you playing your game, and they'll find a place for you and allow you to develop no matter where it is. If you go out there and you start treating this like it's, some kind of, pageant or talent show or something, like you're going about it all wrong. It's really learn, keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, talk to some of the guys that have been there before, your Liam Arnsby's, your Mac Guzdas, your guys that have done this once or twice before. Lean on them and learn from them a little bit, because it's only going to help you get better, because hockey in itself is a game of composure. You got to keep your composure. If you don't, you make stupid mistakes, you make stupid penalties, and you ultimately hurt your team. It's the ones that can stay composed and stick to what their game plan is. Those are always the best teams year in and year out. And it starts in a microcosm here at a rookie showcase. Keep your composure. Just do, it's that old Bill Belichick line, just do your job. And that's exactly right.
Yeah. And the rookie showcases and D camps are some of my favorites, because you don't see, none of these guys are an autopilot. That's the great thing about these, that everybody is, you never know where you're going to end up, and you got to be fighting for your job every single day for this. Not saying that they don't at the NHL level, but when you have an 8-year contract that's one way versus a guy who's trying to earn that, you're just in a different mindset of trying to just earn everything for you. I know we didn't get into every player's name. There's a lot of them here, but we will do so as when we return next week for the show and everything for the results and media availabilities for these players all throughout the 3 games during Rookie Showcase that will be going on in Nashville this weekend. But TJ, I want to thank you so much for joining me on the show. Not only can you tell us where they can follow you online, but also the AHL TV has a new partnership for this upcoming season. So tell everybody about that, of what's going on.
Yeah, so the AHL has recently partnered with Flow Hockey, which is a brand new streaming service that the two teams are working together going forward. It's going to bring some state-of-the-art visuals. It's going to bring a more NHL-level quality production, so we're really excited about it. They just announced it today, as a matter of fact. Plans are out there for as low as $150 for the year, and that gets you not only coverage in the AHL, but it's all of the ECHL and any of Flow Hockey's other properties. They have some racing, they have some junior hockey. So, if any of these guys don't make the Checkers and they end up in the ECHL, or maybe if they get sent back to their junior team, that's a great chance for fans to tune in. They can watch them from the AHL pretty much all the way down. So the AHL TV on Flow Hockey, it's going to be great this year. I'm really pumped, and fans can follow me on Twitter at TJ_CHILLOT.
Awesome, TJ. Thank you so much, and hope to see you next time. And we'll be definitely talking off the record, so can't wait for that.
Awesome, Armando. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On AHL network, including Locked On AHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with TJ Chillot, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.